the health of the soil is everything. And without healthy soil, we're not getting the same nutrients, the same vitamins, the same minerals from our plants. And you had asked me, what are you most excited about with being on the farm? It's healing the soil. That's really exciting. I get the honor and the privilege to be a steward for this small plot of land on Mother Earth, and it's a humbling opportunity to do the best that I can.
This is the Human Future Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology and spirituality with some of the world's brightest minds. Together, we paint a vision of the desirable future and discuss the actionable steps to make that vision a reality. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome. This is where we know where we start. That's where we cut the beginning of the recording. Brother, thank you for agreeing to participate in this experiment. What an honor to have you in the space. What an honor to have you as a friend also. So I would love for you to share with me and with whoever is listening or watching, where are you now in life? You're about to embark on the new journey, and then we'll dive into how you got there, a little bit of a background, some instrumental points that brought you to this moment of making this drastic change in your life.
Thank you for offering this space and this time and the brotherhood and the friendship that we've shared for the last 4.5 years. It's been an amazing journey, and I love you and I appreciate you, and just value our friendship so much. So, it's another chapter in my life right now, a beautiful chapter, where about 3 years ago, over Thanksgiving, I was visiting family in Tennessee, and had mentioned to them that we had looked at some farmland in Guatemala, and my brother-in-law said, well, there's a couple of farms for sale around here. And it's an area of Tennessee that's just passed from generation to generation. And we ended up looking at a couple of farms, and there was one farm in particular that we looked at, and it had 365 long-range sunrises and 365 long-range sunsets, which has been a dream of mine to have a place that had nature and long-range sunsets.
That's the number of sunrises and sunsets.
A year. It's a year long. So I've lived in a couple of places down here where I had sunrises for part of the year, but then it would move to the building, in front of me. And so year-round sunrises and sunsets. So I'm at a point in my life where the dream was whenever my daughter graduated high school that would move to the farm. And so she graduated about 6 weeks ago, and I'm less than a week away from making this new chapter in my life.
Yeah, and I think it would be important for you to also talk about how much conscious intent you're putting into. It's not just the farm, right? That you're doing it in a new way, in a different way, in a more conscious way. So maybe talk to about that.
Yeah. A few years ago, I had the good fortune to run across Dr. Zach Bush, and he's made such a valuable contribution on so many different levels and so many different parts of life. One is an organization that he started called Farmer's Footprint, and it's all about helping farmers start regenerative farms. Transforming from conventional farming to regenerative farming. And so my grandfather was a farmer, and my childhood dream was to become a farmer just like my grandfather, as well as a pastor of a church just like my grandfather. Those dreams kind of ended. The farming ended whenever he sold his farm when I was about 11 years old, and because of health. And then I think, around 14 or 15, I started enjoying girls and Peters. And so, pastoring a church didn't really hold much appeal at that point. But it's been a dream since I was a child to have a farm. And whenever I came across Zach Bush and what he's doing with the regenerative farming, and then got turned on to a lot of the permaculture community that really just invigorated my soul. And so what it is it is a new and more meaningful way to farm versus conventional farming. And it's a way of restoring the land, restoring the soil, and really going back to the ways that it was done, generations ago.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into like the details of all of the practices that you shared with me that I think would be useful to highlight as well. How did you get to this point? Maybe tell me a few instrumental milestones that led to this new chapter. Yeah.
Well, I think one was definitely just growing up in the summers and spring break and Thanksgiving break and winter break, going to my grandfather's farm and really just having a love of farming. And so that was, that would be the first catalyst. The next catalyst would be, just finding out about regenerative farming and permaculture and just how amazing it is for our food, for our health, for the environment. And then, I've always kind of had a dream of being more into nature, and whenever this farm came across, my radar 3 years ago, I decided to buy it and said, this would be a great place to spend the next chapter of my life once the kids are out of the house.
For sure. Man, I think it is actually an important conversation to also highlight the financial, that it could also be a financially viable thing. I mean, you spent how many years as a financial advisor?
27 years.
I think that's an important part of that story, because that's how you scale it, how we can really spread this story, how we can spread this initiative of acquiring land and doing it the right way, right? So maybe talk about your intelligence around financial advisory, and then how you saw this also potentially as an opportunity to.
There's an amazing movie called The Biggest Little Farm that I saw a few years ago, and for those of you that have not seen it, and Kirill, if you have not seen it, we were discussing it last night. It is a must-see. But it shows how it takes about 7 years to take a piece of land from basically barren land, not producing anything, to having a total ecosystem where everything's working in harmony together the way that God intended for it to work. And the beauty of that versus a conventional farm where maybe you've got row crops or you've got one or two, pieces of livestock or not pieces of livestock, but maybe you're just raising cows or you're raising goats or you're raising soybeans or corn or whatever it is. When you've got a total ecosystem where you've got fruits and vegetables and you've got livestock all working in harmony together, then what happens there is you can have a much more profitable farm than if you've just got one crop or you're just raising livestock. And you're also diversifying. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You don't have the same inputs that you've got with a conventional farm. So you're not buying fertilizers. You're not using pesticides and herbicides because everything's working in harmony together the way that nature intended for it to work. So your costs go down, your profits go up, and it's just a much more profitable way to farm. Now, I'm not looking at my farm immediately or maybe even ever to support my lifestyle. I hope that it will. But that's not really the goal. The goal right now is to have a beautiful piece of land that I can enjoy, that my family can enjoy, that my friends can come. Stage 4 of this would be to create a retreat center where other people can come and enjoy it. But it's a movement that's happening, a regenerative permaculture movement that's happening. To get away from conventional farming, to get away from these feedlots, which, it's crazy the way that we're raising animals. And then we're taking, that and putting that in our body. And it's just, it's one reason why we've got the health crisis that we've got. It's one reason we've got the mental health crisis, the physical health crisis, the obesity crisis. It's all in the way we're growing our food. And it's just, it's really insanity.
For sure, man. Yeah. I think it's also an important part of your story is your personal transformation, becoming a coach and having your moments of deep healing and transformation. And then now that's reflecting in the new types of healing that you're interested in the earth on a more global scale. So maybe share with us more about your journey of healing and your personal transformation. I think I don't just want to focus just like you are now the farming expert, because you have so much more talents and experience doing other things that tie into why you're doing this now,
And definitely not a farming expert, a farming novice at best. Yeah. But certainly enjoying going down that rabbit hole, so to speak. So, my story really, I guess kind of starts in the early 90s. Whenever I graduated from school, went into the financial services business. It's a commission-only deal. Starting out was very, very difficult. Get a few months in, I got, no clients, no real prospective clients. Savings are almost gone, and, no desire to ask mom and dad to bail me out. And I'm sitting one night in the room of the, $200 a month furnished, room in the upstairs of a buddy of mine and his wife's house. And I got my bill spread out in front of me. I got the little pile that I can pay and the big pile that I can't pay. And I was just, I was just having kind of a meltdown. And at the end of the meltdown, I looked up and there was a book on the bookshelf, and it was See at the Top by Zig Ziglar. And I thought, wow, that's a funny name, and I on my hands and knees went over and grabbed that book and started reading. And that was really my first introduction into personal development, the human potential. And 3 things I learned from that book. Number 1, you can get anything in life you want as long as you help enough other people get what they want. Number 2, we become what we think about. And number 3, you got to have a vision. And so that night I wrote my first vision. And over the coming weeks, I would practice visualization, seeing and feeling that vision as if it were real. And it took me from really not knowing, do I have what it takes? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Can I make it in this industry? To believing in myself, to actually, not only surviving in that business, but actually thriving. And because of that first book, it just set me on this path of always wanting to know more and grow more. And I've got a deep passion for sharing that with other people. And so in my early 20s, the dream that I had, it had shifted from being a farmer and a pastor to, I'm going to be the next Zig Ziglar, the next Brian Tracy or Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. And I got enough courage when I was 28 years old. A couple of years after moving to South Florida, I decided I'm going to quit. I'm going to go into speaking. I'm going to be a life coach. And I went and I quit. And my managing partner that day was a better sales guy than I was. And he convinced me, hey, you can do that, but you can do it staying in this industry. And here's how you do it. And so I ended up staying in that industry. Grateful to have done it. Learned a lot over the years. But once I hit my late 40s, it was time for me to check out. I loved my 30s, my 40s in the industry. It was, it wasn't fun anymore. And so in 2017, I retired from that industry, took some time off and traveled and really reflected on what do I want the next chapter of my life to look like. And so for the last 7 years, a little bit over, it's been life coaching and working with individuals and groups of people, just helping them really find out where they are, where they want to go, and helping them build the bridge to their best self.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I got a pleasure of participating in one of them, supporting you with like a video stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
in Dallas.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple years ago. Yeah. Maybe share a little bit about the approach, how you work with people, and what. Yeah, let's start there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think life really comes down to two drivers, and it's the consistency of our choices. And, consistency matters. You can't brush your teeth 21 times one day a week and take off the rest of the week, right? I mean, consistency matters, and then life is a choice. No one's doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. And I think the four most important choices that we make are our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our words. And the more consistently we choose the right thoughts, the more clarity we have in life. Yeah. The more consistently we choose the right feelings, the more harmony we experience. The more consistently we choose the right actions, the better the results, more aligned with the vision that we have of our life. And the more consistently we choose the right words, the more influence we have. Influence first and foremost with ourselves. And when we have influence with ourselves, then we can have influence with others. And so when we have clarity, harmony, results, and influence, then we get this success, the happiness, the impact that we really want in life. And so where I spend the majority of my time working with people is helping them create the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, and the language patterns that's consistent with an epic vision that they have for their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking about consistency, I like this analogy. So in order to create any physical manifestation, some kind of result, you need consistency usually. And a great analogy for that is taking a magnifying glass and going outside on a sunny day. And then focus is another key component to that. So you need focus and consistency to make physical change in the environment by burning, let's say, a piece of wood. Because if the distance is not right, there's no change that's happening. Or if you did it for too short of a time, nothing is happening. So you're applying kind of the same idea of consistent, focused.
And look, a lot of people have consistency. It's not that we don't have consistency. We've got consistency. The problem for most people is that the consistency is on the wrong things.
Yeah, right.
And the neuroscientists will tell us that the average person has over 50,000 thoughts a day. And over 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts he had last week, last month, last year. And so, we're architects of our life because we become what we think about. So we're the architect of our life. But the problem is we're architects on autopilot because we're on autopilot with our thoughts. And we're thinking the same things over and over and over. And so how do we pivot that and shift from thoughts that are holding us back to thoughts that are propelling us forward and helping us live our best life and make the impact that I believe we came here to make?
For sure.
And, one way to do that is by having what I like to call neon flashing signs in our life. Those are the constant reminders that are here just telling us and pointing us in the right direction of, hey, here's where you want to be. Here's where you want to be. Think of it as a GPS or a map for your life. And I think the best place to start is by having an epic vision that's aligned with who you want to be, what you want to do, what you want to give, and what you want to feel and experience in life. And that vision can be that roadmap that propels us forward and keeps us driving in the direction that we want. And so now we're shifting our thoughts from the 50,000 plus thoughts a day to things that are not aligned with what we want because we're on autopilot. To us deciding, hey, here's the way I want to think, here's the way I want to feel. So we're increasing the percentage of thoughts on what we want because we've got that neon flashing sign in the form of the epic vision. And whenever we increase the percentage of thoughts on what we want, what are we doing? We're decreasing the percentage of thoughts on what we don't want. And so we become what we think about. If we can increase our percentage of thoughts on what we want, decrease the percentage of thoughts on what we don't want, now we're getting more of what we want, which again, for most of us is to make a beautiful impact in this world and live in harmony with the world. And and just really, experience love and gratitude and happiness and joy and fulfillment, which is, I think one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah, beautiful. One thing that I'm a big proponent of is a conscious use of technology, and this idea that I've shared to you before we started the recording, utilizing AI and self-reflecting. And so speaking about those 50,000 ideas, imagine now you are verbalizing a lot of them. Let's say 50% you're able to go about your day and verbalize whatever thoughts without thinking, just verbalize all of the thoughts that come through your head. And now with the help of AI, it will tell you everything that everything that's going through your head, and it's a beautiful reflection and a mirror of I'm keep having 90% of all of those thoughts at the same thought, and I don't like that thought. It just keeps repeating itself. And so utilizing technology in a conscious way to improve and to grow and to propel yourself into a future version of yourself.
It's a beautiful way to really identify, hey, what doesn't serve us. I mean, one of the exercises that we go through that you witnessed in Dallas with the group was, what are your top 10 most disempowering thoughts? What are your top 10 most disempowering feelings? And whenever we identify that, now what we're doing is we're activating the reticular activating system, the RAS system in our brain, and that's the part of the brain that acts like a radar. Yep. And so it's the part of the brain that if you've ever had the experience of buying a car and then you see that car everywhere, that's why. That's the part of the brain that identifies things. So whenever we give it something to think about, so we identify, as you said, those disempowering thoughts. Okay, now whenever we're experiencing it, there's something that clicks in us, and we can now go off autopilot and say, wait a minute, that's not the way I want to go. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Now you shift, you pull out that vision, see it, feel it as if it were real. And now you're decreasing the percentage of thoughts on what you don't want, increasing the percentage of thoughts on what you do want. Yeah. And so what we're doing by doing that is we're actually changing the neural pathways in our brain. Yeah. So we're firing and wiring different synaptic connections that's going to strengthen the thoughts and feelings that we want. And conversely, they're going to weaken the thoughts and feelings that we don't want. And that's how we shift our personality, shift our personal reality, as Joe Dispenza says, to create a new brain, a new body, new chemical reactions, create a new life, more impactful, more empowering life.
Amazing, yeah. I wanted to see if we can find a thread now between this coaching world that you're in and then the forming the new life. So I think you've mentioned before to me that you are, to your clients, you oftentimes mention the farming as you bring awareness to it, right? And so tell me more about how you bring this topic of regenerative farming into the practice of coaching, if that's a significant thing at all.
It probably is not, although the deeper I get into this and the closer I get to, being on the farm, the more I'm discussing it. Yeah. And what I'm finding is that more and more people are aware that, hey, most of the food that we're eating, most of the food that's sold, it's not good for us. It's been sprayed with chemicals, or it's not raised in it's not raised in alignment with the way nature intended. And so it is bringing awareness to just
more conscious way of life,
more conscious lifestyle, more conscious choices around what I put in my body, more conscious choices around my buying habits, where I'm buying food, what I'm buying. And also it would be, there's so much discussion now on climate change and the CO2 issue, right? And, when we look at conventional farming, we'll have, you can drive down a highway and you'll see pastures, and the grass is short. Yeah. And the cattle are just roaming and they're eating and they're keeping that grass short. The feedlot, which is where we get the majority of the animal products that make it to market, they're coming from feedlots. There's no grass there. Yeah. So there's no CO2 that's being pulled from the atmosphere. CO2 is being pulled from plants. And so AMP grazing or rotational grazing, what happens there is it's the same way that the buffalo would have eaten, right? They come through an area, they eat the top half of a plant, they keep moving, they come back a year later, 6 months later, what it is. And so this type of farming, you're letting the grasses grow significantly taller. You're having the natural occurring grasses there, and you're moving the cattle, the sheep, the goats through. And what they're doing is now you've got land with much taller grasses, which is pulling much more CO2 out of the atmosphere, putting it in the soil where it belongs, making that soil so much healthier. And what's happening there is we're restoring our soil, which we've all heard that, in 3 decades or 4, whatever it is, we're not going to have any topsoil. This is a way to restore the topsoil. So again, I'm not really tying that into coaching so much, as much as just letting people know, just like we were last night discussing this, is there's different ways that we can contribute. And so, there's land out there that doesn't cost that much. You can get it, if you want to, and if it's a dream to have a little piece of land somewhere. 2 of my dear friends, and they're both clients, they bought another farm 2 farms over from mine. So if anyone is interested in homesteading Tennessee, reach out to me. I'll be happy to put you in touch with a realtor that can show you pieces of land. But it's nurturing my soul, and I know it's going to nurture a lot of souls that I get the privilege of inviting to the farm once the retreat center is set up, and we'll eat some really amazing food, be in nature, and just, again, walk barefoot on that land and just connect and ground to land the way that really nature intended for it to be.
How much in your coaching practice you talk about conscious eating, or like toxicity, conscious eating? Is that at all part of your teaching? Is that something you bring in people's awareness?
How we eat, how we breathe, how we sleep, what we put into our bodies, is very much.
What percentage would you say is that part of your teaching?
What's interesting is that a lot of my individual clients, and almost, I would say probably 90% of our members that are in the group programs, which we've got probably around 300 of those members now, the majority of them come because they want to grow their business. They want more profit. And what's really, really cool is that so many times what's holding us back isn't that we don't have the next great idea. We've got the ideas we need to make the income that we want. What's holding us back is we don't feel optimum every single day. We've got distractions. And so we can minimize those distractions through the food that we put in our body, through the way that we breathe, through the exercise, through, fasting, which is something that, that our tribe turned me on to 4 years ago. And I've just finished my 13th 3-day water fast. And this was our 3rd one, taking a group through it. And so a large part of what I share with other people is that conscious way of living, of breathing, of eating, of sleeping, as a means, for the most part, to become a better version of yourself. And whenever you feel better, then you're going to perform better.
For sure. Yeah, I see that that's a perfect bridge that you're now building with the farm, because you're living what you're preaching, not only with even the food that you're buying at the grocery store, what you're cooking and putting on your plate, but actually the entire environment you've now moving into. It's like the major change that you're making to your life, to not even to prove it to anyone else, just to show that.
Just to share. It's just to share. It's just and there's an amazing documentary that just came out. It's called Roots So Deep, and they examined 10 farms and in 5 different locations. And each location has a conventional farm and an AMP grazing farm right next to it. And the scientists came in and they did a couple of year study on how much CO2 is each farm pulling from the atmosphere, how much CO2 is being put in the atmosphere from each farm, how much water is being absorbed by the land, how many insects, how many birds, the health of the animals that are there. And it's amazing the difference between those 2 ways of farming. One is not only much more profitable, much lower expenses, but it's much better for the wildlife. It's much better for our environment. And so one part of my vision is just to be able to have this as one of the many farms that are out there that people can look at and say, oh, wow, you're telling me I don't have to spend $100,000 on fertilizer and pesticides and I can make twice as much revenue? I'm in.
Totally.
So that is one of, I'd shared earlier that, since my early days of personal development, I love sharing what works for me. Not that I've got it all figured out. I definitely don't. But what little I do see and believe, I love sharing. And so, if I can share this with, maybe not our tribe per se, say, hey, I'm going to leave South Florida like Chuck did and go, go live on a farm. But, maybe there's farmers out there that would like to see a different way of doing this, or people that have land and they say, that's pretty cool. I'd like to learn more about that. And again, I'm just, I'm on this journey of learning and navigating it. And thank God for a lot of, really smart people that I'm following and learning from along the way.
For sure. Yeah. Where do you see the future of farming going? Like, what does that look like? Now we have like vertical farming, we have different new technologies, and we have old ways that work. We know that they are very effective the way nature has always done it. Is there kind of like a middle ground of us incorporating very new innovative technologies like vertical farming and things like that with the old ways?
So I definitely do not know enough on this to come across as being anything other than someone that, hey, here's what I believe based upon what I found. And that is that soil, the health of the soil is everything. And so to have the microbiomes, the fungi, just the entire ecosystem that lives below the surface is so impactful. And that's where we get the essential amino acids from. It's just that it is so wildly impactful to have healthy soil. And without healthy soil, we're not getting the same nutrients, the same vitamins, the same minerals from our plants. And so my vision for what's going to happen, and I share this vision with probably everyone that's in permaculture and regenerative farming, is to see a world where conventional farming, feedlots, monocrop farming, pesticides, herbicides are a thing of the past. Because what's happening with that is you're putting that on the ground. It's killing everything beneath the surface. Every time it rains, that topsoil is being washed into the local creek. That creek goes into the river. That river is dumping into the ocean. And it's carrying all those pesticides and herbicides. And that's one of the main problems that's going on with our environment today. And so you've got land, millions and millions and millions of acres, that for half the year have nothing growing on it. So it's just reflecting the heat back up into the atmosphere, as opposed to having grass on it, as opposed to having ground cover on it that's pulling that CO2 out of the atmosphere, putting it in the dirt, putting it in the soil, creating healthy soil. And so the vision that I hope is happening, and it is happening, is that we're going to get to a place where the majority of the food that we eat comes local, where it's not being shipped thousands of miles. You've got tons of local farms that are making a nice living, feeding their families, feeding their communities, and improving the soil health, improving our health, and improving the overall atmosphere and climate that we've got, in Mother Earth, this beautiful Mother Earth.
Yeah, yeah. You could argue that there's a trend of people moving away from cities and creating their own little tribes in rural areas and starting a farm and things like that. Do you see that as a continuing trend and resulting in more tribal living down the line, or is it still just like a very small percentage that will just continue doing that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, but yeah.
I believe that it's a trend that will continue. I also see a trend continuing and starting now. I mean, you and I can drive a few blocks from here, and there's a vacant lot in Midtown, and it's now a garden.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in that community have created this beautiful garden. And so I see people in communities, in cities, taking rooftops and planting raised flower bed gardens where they can get nutrient-dense food there in vacant lots. I see that. That's a vision that I share with a lot of people, that it's not just, hey, let's leave the cities and go out and create these tribes, but let's create right where you're planted. We can start our own gardens. There's an amazing company called Food Forest Abundance. They're out of Florida, and they will look at your property, take a satellite image, look at your latitude, your longitude, the way that the sun hits your house, your yard, and they can design a garden that's a food forest that encompasses all 7 layers of a forest of the way that it shows up in nature. And so very little input, a lot of output. Right. And, we can really supplement what we eat, just in our side yards, our front yards, our backyards. And I see that becoming more in cities and communities. It's not just people leaving the cities.
For sure. Is that the company you're using for your farm? Is that they're doing some work for you? Or?
So once the house is built, that they're, they have to have, because we're going to be putting it around the home. Mm-hmm. So they've got to see, okay, well, how tall is the house? And, because they take into consideration, everything related to the sun, the latitude, the longitude, the weather, and then they will design an entire food forest for you. That's going to be the foundation.
A big theme of the podcast is kind of building the bridge between technology and spirituality and talking about visions of the future that are desirable. How can we tie this in? So maybe speaking about technology playing a role in future farming, what do you see? What have you noticed? Maybe some developments that are happening, or what you would like to see in the future, maybe?
Intuitively, I think technology has probably really harmed farmers up to this point. From a standpoint of, we're disking land, we're plowing land, we're killing, technology of chemicals and things like that. So I think that there has to be a shift to go back to the way that nature intended for us to farm. Yeah. How can technology play a role? Well, certainly the way that AI can analyze what's good, what's bad, and give us feedback, and the way that technology is being used, as an example with Roots So Deep, they use technology to show, hey, here's the difference. Here's conventional, here's amp grazing. Yeah. So I see it proving, I see technology proving this is a better way. Yeah. We're going to go back, and it's not just going back in time, but we're going back to the way nature intended it. And here's the proof through technology that this is a more productive, better way for us to farm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that technology certainly have brought some negative effects towards farming. I think it was also trying to address a bigger problem of how to feed growing population, and it's just was it had to prioritize basically the variables that it was optimizing for, like, and with the lack of knowledge about how it's actually harming. People weren't aware like that this type of farming is so bad for the planet. They probably had some guesses, but they didn't really understand the scale of the problem.
I'm sure that no one had ill intent whenever they
Right.
started using the pesticides and the fertilizers the way that they did. I think the other thing was that all of a sudden, maybe it wasn't all of a sudden, but at some point in time, it became a lot more attractive to leave the farm, go get a college education, go get a job wherever, and just it became very expensive to be a farmer.
Yeah.
And so I guess that trend is now reversing. Not the fact that maybe it's not as expensive, but the fact that that more and more people are saying, look, okay, I've lived this lifestyle, I've chased this dream of success and living in the city and now I want to get back to nature. And again, that's not right for everyone, obviously, but there is a growing population of people that that is attractive for, and the more people that are diving into this.
Yeah.
And are seeing it and feeling it and experiencing it. We're really, I view myself, less, really the way I'm seeing this is I'm a steward of this land.
Yeah.
And you had asked me last night, what are you most excited about with being on the farm? And I told you it's healing the soil. From decades of tobacco farming and then just raising livestock to healing that soil and making it super rich, super nutrient dense. That's really exciting. And so, I get the honor and the privilege to be a steward for this small plot of land on Mother Earth. And it's just a honor, and it's a humbling opportunity to do the best that I can. And, thankfully, there's a lot of people out there that are way ahead of me on this journey that are sharing this with the world.
Yeah. Speaking about also human future, I wanted to get your opinion on, let's say we do become interplanetary species, and some subset of humans won't have access to the grounding of the Earth, being here and be in the frequency of the Earth that we know that's what our body needs to stay healthy. Do you think that's a total prerequisite for us to have a healthy lifestyle, to be in nature? Is that the only way to live a healthy life?
I know for me it is.
Yeah.
And I can speak to myself. And so for me to be able to ground, to be able to feel nature, was that because as a kid I grew up, spending time in nature and hunting and fishing and farming and gardening is in walking in nature, is that why? Maybe, maybe I was programmed in those first 7 years to, hey, this is an important part. This is, this was the beauty of Chuck Downs and his life. Some of the kids today, obviously, concrete jungles. And so what's it like, do they have to have that to be happy? I'd like to really think that they don't have to have that to be happy. Is it a catalyst to be happy? From my experience, yes. Yes, I can't imagine if we don't make this shift, and heal the earth and heal the soil. If we keep going down this path, and all of a sudden, every vacant lot is AstroTurf. That's the grass. and concrete and, and buildings everywhere and, very few trees. I mean, what would that be like?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound very exciting to me.
It doesn't, yeah. This whole notion of what is natural, I've personally gone this rabbit hole of trying to really get to the root of the bottom of like the definition of what is natural. What is natural in your terms? Like, how would you describe that?
Well, I think on Earth, natural would be something different than some other universe out there without an Earth. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's so many different dimensions I sense and others much smarter than me believe exist. And so what's natural in other dimensions would be different than here. Natural here, for me, would be just the way Mother Earth has it. It would be dirt and plants and trees and the sky and the waters. That's nature to me. And that's natural for me.
Yeah.
Not natural would be, whenever we leave this building and, we've got, we're in the middle of Miami and, it's a beautiful city. I love this city. I love the people here. It's on the beautiful Biscayne Bay. It's on the ocean. It's a beautiful place. Whenever I'm walking down the streets and, I'm surrounded by concrete, that doesn't feel natural to me.
And would you say not natural equals artificial? Is that
That's a great question. Not natural, artificial. That doesn't seem artificial. I think artificial would be a plant that it's trying to look like a plant.
Yeah.
But it's not a plant. So to me, that would be artificial. Mm-hmm. A building is not artificial. That's a real building, but it's not a natural building.
Okay. Because basically, I think what the line that we draw between what is natural and what is not natural is the conscious intent of a conscious being. Basically, if there are, let's say, monkeys creating some, like they had tools, also some kind of primitive tools to make change in the world. We don't consider that unnatural, but once humans start to put their conscious intent into reshaping matter, whatever is humanly created, we consider not natural. It's like a man-made type thing. Would you kind of agree with that?
I think that is the way that we view it. And thank God we've got the ability to have not natural. I mean, I would hate to think that, okay, we're going to go back thousands of years ago and just, we're living in caves or under trees. I mean, that doesn't sound very enticing.
Yeah.
So, human ingenuity, our ability to pull ideas from the universe and put those ideas, I mean, it's certainly improved the quality of our life. And it's this dance of, okay, how far do we push it? It's serving us. Okay, now it's not serving us. And it's just this evolution that's happening. And I think what's important for us, especially, in the world that we're living today is can we identify the things that are no longer serving Mother Earth, serving humanity, and then can we say, all right, that's enough of that, and stop it with integrity. That's a challenge. That's our challenge. That is one of our challenges today is how far can we push something before we say, okay, this no longer serves humanity. It's not serving the earth.
Right.
Let's stop that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what is your practice or way of finding the balance between being physically embodied and let's say in farming, that's very much a physical practice of creating physical change in the environment, and the other component to our life is the mental exploration where, let's say, you you have some time to reflect and think, and it's all happening in the ethereal domain. And you would argue that over time, as we would evolve, or any species evolve, they spend more and more time in the ethereal domains and not in the physical embodied domains. Is there a healthy balance between still be grounded? We have our physical body for a reason, and we should really be utilizing it. But at the same time, now we have this capability of spending some of our time, or for some, it's a majority of their time, exploring ethereal domains of existence. For you, what is how do you find that balance between not to go too far out and not be too grounded in the physical?
It's really just listening to the intuition. Mm-hmm. It's I have a daily practice of sitting in silence. That's the way I begin each day, and getting grounded just by tapping in. Mm-hmm. And feeling the presence that I like to refer to as God's presence. And so when I'm in those moments of silence, I really get direction. Mm-hmm. And intuitively, I can sense and feel, okay, am I on course? Am I off course? Am I aligned with my purpose? Am I following that hero's journey? I believe this soul that came to this body, mm-hmm. came to earth in this body, am I on that path? And so it's more of an intuitive feeling for me. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly been something that, for many, many years, I was ignoring. It's so easy to ignore our intuition, then ignore it again. And then, it finds a way of getting our attention. For me, it was a dark night of the soul that was like, all right, wake up. So it's really just intuitively sensing and asking yourself and having that time to connect to source, to God, to your higher power, the higher power that exists, and just sensing and feeling.
Yeah. I think an important component is committing to the practice of stillness. Because you weren't noticing it before, because you were always doing something. You're always, and by you, I mean everyone else.
We all do it
for sure.
Yeah.
That's what really pulls us away from that intuitive knowing about something. And so it's finding the place and space and time for sitting down and do that every day to consistently listen to that voice. Yeah.
It's for many years, I had the intention of having that as a daily practice. And it was the majority of the days. And in July of 18 began and I didn't say, okay, this is the day, I'm never going to stop. It was a couple of months later, I realized, wow, I've had a pretty good run here. I tracked it back, and wow, I haven't missed a day since July. And so many things have shifted for me over those 6 years mm-hmm. of being able to really sense my intuition on a much deeper level, and things that no longer served me, that I had tried to give up, that I tried to quit, things that served me that I wanted to start. And it was willpower. I'm trying hard and struggling to give them up and stop them. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it was several of them. It's just, they no longer had an appeal. It was, and so that stillness, that daily stillness, if there's one practice that I would, if anyone said, hey, what's the one thing?
Totally.
That's the one thing.
Great.
It's daily stillness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have, I'm doing a little bit of an experiment. So I have a few rapid questions for you. So give me like a short little answer to those types of questions. Yeah. What is one book that significantly influenced your thinking?
Rapid fire, you said. There's so many that are coming through.
Yeah, which one? The first one that comes to mind?
Right now, it's the 4 Agreements.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. If you could implement one global change, what would that be?
Permaculture. Everyone adopt permaculture, regenerative farming.
Yeah. And what is one common misconception about farming, your expertise, but farming, let's do farming.
Again, I've got to say, I have no expertise. Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, what is one misconception? Let's choose the expertise that you want to go with.
Okay.
What is one misconception about the area of expertise that you're in?
I think that the misconception is that we can spray anything on the soil and it doesn't matter. So it's just the misunderstanding of soil health.
Mm-hmm. Right. What is your definition of desirable future?
A future that's aligned with our higher self and the higher self of the planet and humanity.
Yeah. And what would be one call to action to listeners you would like to share?
Adopt daily stillness.
There we go. Yeah. Beautiful. This is, if you have any other resources you want people to point people to, or anything else you would like to share in this way, feel free to do that. That would be a great place to do it.
Yeah, anyone that's listening that would like to learn more, I've already mentioned The Biggest Little Farm. That's like that's kind of the gateway movie into the way that this whole thing looks and works and performs. Roots So Deep is another amazing one. Kiss the Ground is another great movie, documentary. And then if anyone will dive into the work of Dr. Zach Bush and Farmer's Footprint, it's just an amazing organization. So many conventional farmers, the way that they're making ends meet right now is they have to borrow money from the government through banks. They then have the money to buy the seeds to put in the ground. Those contracts that they sign require them. They are required to put pesticides and herbicides on their fields. That's a requirement of the loan. And so they're living from one growing season to the next. And so Farmer's Footprint raises money for awareness and to help farmers, family farms, convert from conventional farming to regenerative permaculture farming, so that they can live, a more sustainable life, so they can better sustain the earth and heal the soil. So Farmer's Footprint, Dr. Zach Bush, they're doing amazing work.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother.
It's such an honor. Thanks for holding this space and for the opportunity to share. Beautiful. Love you and appreciate you.